This is the third presentation in this series. The first one was in December of 23, and then we did one last September, just about a year ago. And it's all part of the evolving process of the chaos that's going on in college football right now. And actually all college athletics, but it's driven by football. And it all started in May of 2021 when Justice Kavanaugh, in one of the lawsuits that the Supreme Court was deciding, the NCAA versus Alston, I think, wrote a concurring opinion, which was not necessary to actually decide the point before it. But what he said in that opinion, he says, you ought to let these kids make money, okay? And boy, the dam broke. And that's why we did the first and second presentations, because of the evolution of all of this to this point. Now, what I'm going to talk about this morning, about 2/3 of it is going to be explanation of the settlement that was done. It was approved in June. The effect of it started July the 1st. But this is all new stuff. And the purpose of discussing the first 2/3 of this is settlement. It's really fascinating. I hope that it will help you wade through some of the mishmash you read about it so that you can understand the key points when it comes up, whatever your news source is. And it'll help you with that. And then the last third of it, I'll talk about what I think 4 key issues outside of the settlement to look forward to in the next 2, 3, or 4 years. While we have experienced incredible change in 4 short years in college sports, particularly football, it's not over yet. So it was not the college football that I grew up with or any of you experienced before. It has dramatically changed. It's dollar-driven. TV money is driving the show, sad to say. So, all right, college football. Is it unsettled, distressed, expensive? Is the NCAA losing control? Student athletes winning the war, the dollar war? President and Congress getting involved? Or all of the above? It's an easy answer if you keep up with this stuff. It is indeed all of the above. This is a settlement. It was an antitrust lawsuit. There were actually 3 of them joined together. What was antitrust action about? It was the NCAA rules that were in place that said, affect bottom line. You really can't earn money while you're on scholarship. And that included name, image, and likeness, which we'll talk about. And so the settlement was agreed upon in April of this year after about 18 months of intense negotiation. The dollars in this are staggering. You'll see in a moment. There are 3 main parts to it. There are 3 money buckets. This is my attempt to do a money bucket, but great help. Sue was great help, my daughter, and Dustin. There's the back pay component. There's the revenue sharing component. This is the salaries for the kids. And then there is the dread NIL, name, image, and likeness. The settlement really, as we will discuss in a minute, is based on these 2, back pay and revenue sharing, leaving this wide open to ultimately be determined by whatever the conferences decide, the SEC, Big Ten, or whatever they are, Big 12, all of those. The judge who handled this lawsuit and basically handed down an opinion about a year ago has been the judge over the past 10 years handling all of the NCAA litigation. And the NCAA is, I think, 0-10 in their results with her. And you'll see in a minute, that's one of the reasons they finally agreed to sell. Okay. Division I schools, just so you can understand the lay of the land, there are 356 schools in Division I. 134 are in the collection that we normally know, the football bowl subdivision, the FBS. That's the big 134. The other 200 and something are the football champion series, North Dakota State, those teams. This is primarily a Division I settlement. The Division II schools, Evan and I have talked about this, the Division III schools, they're going to have the trickle-down effect of this. They're not bound by any of this, but they got to play the money game in some respect, or all of their athletes will transfer up the line to go to where the money is. It's a bad effect. So 319 schools, or about 90% of the Division I schools, opted in. There are almost 390,000 Division I athletes in all sports, and about 101 of them, 101,000, opted in to be a part of the settlement. And that component that we'll talk about in a minute, is the back pay part of this, okay? Because they can participate. The schools that signed on for this, as we'll talk about in a minute, are guaranteed protection from lawsuits over the next 10 years. We'll discuss that in more detail. Here is the back pay. $2.5 billion. For those 101,000 kids that opted in, they have to have been an athlete from June of 16 through September of 24 to possibly be eligible to get some of that back pay. What is that back pay for? Lost opportunities for name, image, and likeness that they could have cashed in on while they were playing. The split right now, because football in all athletic departments provides about 85 to 90% of the revenue for the entire athletic program. Men and women's basketball, they're good if they break even. Some schools like Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, they make a lot of money, but they're basketball-centric schools. And then you have baseball. God bless them. If they could just break even, it's a great year. The rest of the sports, and there are 19 total sports at A&M, we just call them non-revenue sports because they're just living off of whatever football brings in. The suggested split in the settlement agreement was however it is done, and 75% will go to the football players because they are the money generators. Deloitte Touche, I guess they just call it Deloitte now, was hired and their economists to determine that these kids submit claims like, okay, I was an athlete from 2018 to 2020, and I was all conference fullback. How much is it worth? I don't know what in the world kind of algorithm they'll use to determine to write this kid a check. But that's beyond me. All I know is what I can point out here. Now, I don't think the kids thought this all through when they saw the settlement and ran home and told Mama, we are rich. The lawyers are going to get 20% of all of this money. So it's going to be somewhere for two different law firms and their subsidiary law firms about $500 million, maybe $600 million. That's over 10 years, but that comes out of the pot. So they need to, the kids need to have a realistic moment. How do you fund this? Now, this is interesting. The NCAA is a collection of schools and the board of directors of university presidents. So they're almost indistinguishable. But the NCAA makes about $1 billion a year off the March Madness. Amazing. The rest of the stuff, it's the March Madness. But the NCAA over 10 years is going to have to pay $1.1 billion. And that will come from, tapping their reserves, cutting operating. It was about $700 million. This is big business. Now, here's the misnomer. The schools are going to pay $1.4 billion of that $2.5 billion back pay component. And what's going to happen is the NCAA, to those 319 schools that opted into the settlement, it's like, congratulations, you've just agreed to give up payments from me, the NCAA, to you of about $1 to $2 million a year. Now, that $1 to $2 million a year is the projected impact on the big schools, A&M, Texas, those that have revenue streams at the top of the list. But as we'll show you in a minute, that's not an insignificant figure in the overall scheme of events. Now, as I said there, how of 5 schools or how of 4, $1 to $2 million a year. Now, here's a gnarly issue. You will see a lot more lawsuits. The issue is Title IX involved in this? You have women's sports, and Title IX is tied to scholarships. If you give males 250 scholarships, you got to match that with female. That's why a lot of the female sports, aside from basketball, that's why we have a very large equestrian team at A&M, so you can get a balance on scholarships. The Title IX issue is open. There are plaintiffs' lawyers that are salivating. They just can't wait for this. Now, the revenue sharing. This is the second bucket. This is the going forward component. And could you get me some water over there, Fred? I appreciate it. This is the going forward component. This is now going to be salaries that are paid to the kids. Can you believe that? Salaries. Amazing. I just remember way back when, and I know Bob knows this, and used to, when a college coach came to your house and offered you a scholarship, you were so grateful, almost got down on your knees and said, thank you. Now, they go meet the kid says, yeah, thank you, I've got 12 other offers, I'll give it to my agent, we'll be back in touch with you. And now, of all the indignities, we're going to have to pay them. What we got in college, great food, great medical care, you got an education. You know, I thought that was a pretty good deal. NIL working on the edges, okay? Here is a problem that was not resolved in the settlement, but we'll talk about it again more in a moment. You've got kids that'll be salaried. This started July 1st. I'm going to A&M tomorrow, and I hope to see our athletic director. And I want to ask him, what is the salary structure? I have a suspicion that it'll be just like the NFL. A right guard is worth this amount, a quarterback is worth this amount. To distribute, as we'll see in a minute, $20 million per year. That's a lot of money for kids. It's not all football, but most of it will be football. But are these kids employees? When we talked last time, before this settlement was this far down the road, the concern of all things, including in the right to work states like Texas, the athletic directors and the conferences were saying, yes, let's make them employees. Before, that was, oh no. And if you remember from the last presentation, we talked about the history of the term student athletes, how that evolved. to avoid being considered employees. A year ago or less, the thought was, yes, let's make them an employee. Then we can have collective bargaining and we can control this out of control mess. The settlement changed that, and we'll discuss in a second about that. But the court says the settlement, we're not going to decide whether they're employees or not. And the court says, you know what? If you want to try unionization, which Dartmouth and Northwestern and even Southern Cal, they were going down that road, have at it. The conferences, this will be important. Let's just say the SEC, all of the coaches hate the transfer portal rule. Right now, you can hop around like a frog every semester if you want to. Think about that if you're a coach trying to build a roster and you hurt one of your players' feelings one day and he says, well, I'm leaving. Well, fine, goodbye. But it messes your roster up. The conferences in the settlement were told you can create rules to minimize that. And we'll see in a minute. They're trying to get to one transfer only at some unusual circumstances. This is important. Athletes need to continue to progress towards a degree. Some of them can spell cat if you spot a C and a G. But the goal is for a group of them to get degrees, and the NCAA has a graduated progression schedule where those kids have to meet certain benchmarks. So at the time they are a senior, they are 3/4 of the way there. So it's there. It's just how the conferences enforce it. Okay. How does this come up with on the second bucket, revenue sharing, salary? They took 70 top football programs, athletic programs, determined their revenue and divided it by 70 to get an average amount. And then they concluded by settlement that they would take 22% of revenue consisting of these four things. There are other components to it, but they chose that so that if you're participating in this as a school, and what is going to be your exposure actually impact on your cash flow bottom line. And they said every school that participates in this, you will have a cap of 22% of your operating revenue. Now, for A&M in Texas and the Biggies, Oklahoma, that's $22 million. For the smaller schools in Division I, it's whatever 22% of your defined operating revenue is. So if you had a school with, $100 million of revenue, then your cap is 22% of that, or $50 million, let's say, then that's half of that. So that's how it works. It's not $22 million for everybody. Now, it's capped this year at $22.5 million. There's an escalator clause in it. Every year for the next 10 years, it escalates 4%. By 10 years, that bottom line each year cap that's got to be distributed to athletes, and it's your choice how you want to spread it among various sports. For instance, at Nebraska, the women's volleyball team is number 2 to football, so they're going to get a disproportionate share relative to basketball and all. So that's interesting. You can get credit. We'll see in a minute. In terms of the provision, have said there will now be no limit on scholarships. Well, I've got a specific example of 2. And this means that if you offer all these new scholarships, that counts against your 22.5. We're talking economic benefits to all of the athletes. And so for A&M, that will be $2.5 million this year in new scholarships that we're offering primarily to the non-revenue or the Olympic sports. What is the impact of this pay going forward? Over 10 years, $20 billion for. So whereas we used to just rejoice on Saturday at the simple state of college football and all, now it is an economic engine. Our eyeballs drive the TV networks to go crazy, throw money out the window to anybody that will take it in athletics. Now, here's some new things. The caps on the number of scholarships have been eliminated. Football is currently 85 scholarships. We typically had about 115 kids like all schools did. You now can offer 105 scholarships. Basketball was bumped up a couple. Baseball, this is lovely. Baseball, you could split 11.7 scholarships among about 35 kids. One might get a full scholarship. One might get free Coca-Colas. I don't know how they determine that. But now, up to 34 scholarships, each one of those kids will get a full scholarship. So it's good for the kids. Track, oh my goodness, 45 men, 45 women, full scholarships.
Wow.
Now, if the schools can afford it, the cap was lifted on the number of scholarships that they can offer. And the schools and the conferences will have to decide roster limits, because if the conference says, look, we're only going to have 100 football players, well, that's what they've agreed to. So there's a lot of latitude in there, but it's still money driven. Yes. Bucket number 3. This is where the devils are. Name, image, and likeness, NIL. That's the one that you hear most all about. Really, this has only been going on for 3 or 4, maximum 4 years. We'll just give the first year after that Supreme Court decision in May of 2021 to kind of figure out, how do I drive this car? The last 3 years, you've seen crazy NIL deals. I think his name is Chad Campbell out at Texas Tech, a well-to-do oil man, is pouring money into their NIL program like crazy. They signed a young man who was really sought after all over the country to a $5 million 3-year contract to come to Tech. Now, that is illegal under the current rules. You cannot pay to induce them to come to your schools, but a lot of people are doing it. It's really out of control. Now, here's a key. Well, when Deloitte got involved recently to look at this, they were to look at all of the NIL contracts, and they did a look back. About 70% of the deals, the boosters, were disguised pay-for-pay payments. It was unrelated, untethered to market value, okay? And that's the case when the past year or so, you've seen a lot of high school kids that are still in high school get these phenomenal offers to go to a university. That's pure pay-for-play. The other sad example is in some schools, you have a third-team guard who was making $150,000, and it was claimed, okay, it's great market value at Whataburger. Well, come on, we know that's not true. So it was pay for play. That's what the conferences and the athletic directors are trying to rein in, the NIL. That's the monster. The NIL is not capped like revenue sharing, okay? Anything goes. It's a separate money source for the players. The players have figured it out really quickly. Like, okay, I know I'm going to have a certain check coming in each month from the university to pay for them, But gee, if I go out, if I get my agent, and they can have agents, if I can get my agent to line up several deals, Joe's Tire Shop, Whataburger, Mike's Auto Dealership, it's unlimited what he can make until now, and I'll explain why. The intent of the settlement overall was to shift the player money away from NIL to revenue sharing that has a cap. Why is that? If you're an athletic director, you've got a budget. How are you going to meet that budget? And NIL is not directly in the athletic budget, but it does on the periphery, all your boosters and even independent third-party people. It does impact what you're doing within the athletic department. We'll go into that in a second. Okay, this is on the A&M slide in here. My friend Johnny Manziel, NIL going forward. The player compensation, this is in the settlement, and this will be in the conference rules. The player compensation has to be market-based, not pay for play, but real connection to the real world. The language in the settlement is that any NIL deal must have the valid business purpose. Okay? It must be entered into for the actual purpose of promoting a brand or business at fair market value. There's Johnny. He was what he's doing the money. He was ahead of his time. He got in trouble for signing autographed footballs for $100 to $200. We just think, oh my goodness, if this had been in place when Johnny, the year he won the Heisman Trophy, he could have been one of our biggest donors by now. That's it. Show me the deliverables. Okay? NIL has been around a while. How many of you have ever eaten down in Goff's Hamburgers right there off the SMU campus? I love their hamburgers. This is on the wall there. Doak Walker, their Heisman Trophy winner. I think he was there 47 through 49. Okay. Look at that. Let Dr. Pepper be your lift for life, as it is with Doak Walker and millions of others. What I don't know, I've sent this to our athletic directors before, I don't know if this was done after he was at SMU, which was a legitimate, or I highly suspect while he was there. So NIL has not been, it's not a brand new thing, okay? Okay, who are the people paying NIL? First of all, there's the outside part, it's Whataburger, MTV Tire. Then this is where the crazy stuff happens. Your booster clubs, your collectives, that's the one they're really, really trying to rein in. And of course, the schools themselves now can do NIL agreements, but it comes under the cap. So you'll see very few of these. 90%, 75%, 25%. That's where it's going to go. Still a lot of money out there. Okay. Now, there's a collegiate sports commission that was formed to enforce the rules of this settlement. That's where Deloitte Touche comes in, and they created a specific entity, a subsidiary NIL Go, to do the legwork on it. But for every NIL contract over $600, that's all. That's such a low limit. It has to go to this clearinghouse. And again, I have no clue what kind of algorithm that they will have, but most of them, we'll see in a moment, have been approved since July the 1st, but there were many, many, many before that would never have passed the true market test. Even if you are not a Division I school, you're a Division II or III, and you are not a party to the settlement, they are bound by the settlement that every NIL contract in college football has to go up to Deloitte for approval of over $600. There have been 1,500 approvals since July 1. I had not been able to find out how many were actually submitted, but I think it was literally a tidal wave. All these kids want to figure out how to get money. There are 12,000 athletes and 1,100 institutions that have signed up for this NIL gov saying, we're going to be a player, we'll submit everything to you. Okay? Why was this settlement made in the first place? The money is staggering. Well, as I said, the NCAA has a terrible track record in their lawsuits. If they had lost this one, the NCAA would have had to declare bankruptcy. They were in the process within 6 months of going to trial in this case, and the established damages were already $2.5 billion minimum. That the NCAA would have had to go into immediate bankruptcy. So that was one of the drivers. The other one, like I say, this is the wild, wild west. The schools, the conferences, the athletic directors, they all wanted to rein this craziness in, particularly on the NIL, because we all want our teams to do so well, and everybody was cheating like crazy on NIL. This is your athletic director. This is cash flow. Okay? This is my friend, the athletic director at A&M, was told July 1st, this is now going to be part of your budget going forward. Back pay, I'm not going to get a check from the NCAA this next year for $1 or $2 million. I got to figure out how to make that up. I now have revenue sharing, $20 million. Coaches are going to tell me how to spread it out, but that's now in my budget. And new scholarships. I've got about 100 more scholarships. I think we have like 650 student athletes at A&M. So, oh my God, how does he sleep? This year, only 20 to 24 million he's got to figure out how to make up. Okay, do I raise ticket prices? Dreaded, do I cut the swimming team, the women's soccer team? The politics at A&M are vicious. You wouldn't dare do that. Every mama in Texas would be storming the walls at cost. So you got to figure out how to do it. I read Iowa State is projecting within, I think, 8 years, they will be $175 million in the hole. They've stopped construction or reconstruction of the basketball arena. They're cutting some sports. Why? For the idolatry of the dollar, the TV dollars. It's ruining college sports as we knew it. It just makes me sick. Okay, federal intervention needed. This is called the SCORE Act. It's before Congress right now. This is going to be critical to making everything work. It's House of Representatives Bill 4312. That's just some nice stuff we created there. Let's go to the terms of it. Student compensation and opportunity through rights and endorsements act. It's currently in committee. Previous bills by Cruz and Tuberville, those are senators and other representatives, have not gotten very far, primarily because a lot of the Democrats were saying, no, we want unionization, we want collective bargaining. But I think if it's ever going to pass, and it must pass now, I think they were all kind of waiting on this settlement to get done. The SCORE Act tracks the settlement, basically, as does Trump's executive order. And his executive order doesn't have much force and effect. It's basically a pronunciation. I agree with that, okay? Which hopefully will nudge him along. All right. Why is this act important? First of all, every state has different laws on NIL. In Louisiana, even high school kids can get NIL. Go figure. You know, I played football at Terrell, but I might have gotten one or two free milkshakes at the Dairy Queen for my performance, but goodness gracious, what is high schools doing? But the federal legislation will say, we preempt all of your state laws. You're going to do that for uniformity purposes. That's good. Here's the biggie. Antitrust exemption. Major League Baseball, NFL. With the antitrust exemption, the conferences can make the rules that they feel are appropriate to making the machine work, and they will not be subject to lawsuits of an antitrust nature or otherwise. So you've got to have that in there to make the clock work. It'll protect the rights of the student athletes. It'll have the valid business purpose. It'll have the revenue caps. It'll have the NIL Go clearinghouse that we've talked about. Here's another important one. Student athletes will not be considered to be employees. So we went from the athletic directors having their underwear or not saying, we've got to go to collective bargaining, to now, if Congress passes this, we don't need to worry about it. Now, I'm not sure you call somebody what name they're going to give them. If they work for you, you're paying for them. Sure sounds like an employee to me, but they're creating, you're not an employee, but you're going to get paid, so go figure. They will be given academic support and counseling. The last two are really good. You will be given medical care benefits for 3 years after your graduation or separation from a school. And the last one, I really, really like. Schools will pay. It's kind of like they're keeping their scholarship open until they return. And we had a very good player for us in early 90s, just graduated. Came back last year, his mother said, before I die, you better get that damn degree. And so he did. But it's now going to be law. I think this is going to pass. Okay. The conferences will be cleared to establish and enforce all of these rules. Agents will have to register. All of this will have to be above board. The contracts, you can go online and see what they are. And more importantly, and this is the other key driver that athletic directors and the coaches want so bad, rules control the transfers. And the current thought is you get one transfer unless your coach leaves you. And then that's the other exception. And okay, you're free to go someplace else. It's chaos just under the transfer portal because the way things are set up right now, it's free agency in college football. Disgusting. Okay? Now, here are the other things. Good. We have time for questions even. Other things to look forward to. I just wanted to give you an idea, though, as it might have been, about that settlement in the House case. It is a sea change event. Nothing like it has ever occurred. The consequences of it economically, you couldn't have done anything like this in your wildest dreams, but it's here. It's reality. The schools are having to live with it. And I wanted to give you some Rosetta Stones as you read all of the conflicting information to, try to keep up with it. Now, 4 things. There's going to be more realignment of conferences. We're not done yet. We had the recent wave where Texas and OU came to the SEC. We'll talk about this in a minute. The playoff structure is changing yet again this year, may change for next year. Football is still going to pull out of the NCAA. The athletic directors and most of the coaches are fed up with the NCAA because they were a toothless tiger and they would not enforce the rules. And those that cheated the most benefited the most, and those that had to play it straight were suffering. So they're going to form their own organization. Basketball and all the other sports will stay with the NCAA. As I've said before, we were talking about last time, wouldn't shock me into this new entity for Division I football if Nick Saban weren't the commissioner. He is so well respected, he's tough, and they would have a great enforcement agency under that. And then a super money league is coming. I say that for the end to keep you here, and we'll have some discussion on that. If you thought we've had change up to this point, buckle your seatbelt. The next 5 years are going to be crazy. Why? Because the big TV contracts, particularly the college football playoff one, get renegotiated in 2030. The schools are making plans. They are looking at each other's balance sheets. They are determining who will be the most likely candidates to be invited to the prom, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, major conferences. In the Power Five, it's really Power Four, the Pac-2 now instead of Pac-12. And then the Group of Five. There's 16 teams in the SEC. We're going to 18 in the very near future. The Big Ten, they're already at 18. They'll stay there. The ACC, a lot of turmoil there. We'll talk about that in a second. The Big 12 is going to pick up one or two. We're all going to get to about 18 teams. One of the teams may be coming from the American Athletic Conference. Okay? Possible moves. You may have heard about last week, North Carolina. North Carolina, I know that SEC looked at some time ago. They would have been happy with North Carolina or Duke, primarily for the basketball. North Carolina's smart. The ACC, Clemson and Florida State want in the SEC so bad that they just can't stand it. They initiated litigation against the ACC to try to bust out of their contract where they had to pledge their ultimate trust, faith, jewelry, everything for the media rights to stay in the ACC. Now, North Carolina is saying, you know what? A couple of years, this is all going to go crazy. We're setting the groundwork. And you may have read in the paper, they were sort of publicly saying, we think the SEC is great. Wink, wink, here we are. Come invite me to the prom. And who knows? I think North Carolina will end up in the Big Ten, okay? One reason they're not leaving immediately, if North Carolina left tomorrow, they would owe the ACC $165 million. That's the buyout, okay? By 2030, it'll only be $75 million, so they'll bail. You'll see it. They'll be gone. Clemson and Florida State were less subtle. They just been jumping up and down. We want out. We want out. The ACC and these teams settle, and these teams were given a disproportionate share of the revenue. It's like Texas and Oklahoma and A&M did with the Big 12 a few years ago. We're more important. We draw more fans, more TV eyeballs. We deserve more. American Athletic Conference. Memphis, you may have read about that. They tried to buy their way into the Big 12. Said, we will basically give you $200 million. We will forego our contracts with Lowe's and Home Depot and FedEx, as it's in Memphis. We'll just give that to you, Big 12, if you'll let us come sit at the big table. They're in the American Conference right now. And right now, Big 12 said, no, we're not interested yet. So there's more turmoil yet to come. College football playoff from 2014 to 23. The College Football Playoff Committee, which meets out at Gaylord Perry each year, they have the room set aside for them. They decided the 4 teams that were going to play. 2024, it was expanded to 12 teams. Each Power 4 conference champion was automatically in. They had a bye. That's what it was last year. This year, interestingly, the top 4 teams in the rankings will be the top 4 seeds. Winning the conference championship in the Power 4 will not mean that much. It will not get you an automatic bye. You may have won the conference championship, but if that committee thinks you're a 3, you played a really weak schedule, sorry, you're in the number 7 slot, not number 4. But change yet again. Everybody wants the money to be in the college football playoffs. It may not happen next year, but within 2 years, 16 teams, okay? And it's going to be, right now, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and Notre Dame say, look, we're, at 12, just add 4 more at-large teams, whoever you think is appropriate. Ironically, the Big 10 and the SEC are split on this issue. The Big 10 wants 4 bids each for the SEC and the Big 10 because they're the big dogs. They're the big gorillas in the jungle right now, economically and otherwise. 2 bids each for the ACC and the Big 12 and then 4 at large. It's going to happen. Which model, who knows? Now, here's the big one. Oh, I wish Mike Amos could have made it this morning because I wanted to really visit with him. SMU. Something big, one way or the other, is going to happen. The TV money, I think there will be ultimately by 2030 or so, a 32-team super conference. How do you get into that? You will be invited by the TV gods. Ron, your brand is an attractive brand, meaning what? People love to watch your team on TV. It will no longer be A&M versus Sam Houston State. It'll be A&M versus Penn State. I mean, you can see where they're headed. And it's all money driven. Again, a disaster is looming. What's going to happen? There will be, right now, A&M, Texas, and OU are pretty firm to be in that top 32 because of their fan base, their history, all of that. What about Texas Tech? What about Baylor? What about SMU? I think that's why SMU became so aggressive in the past 2 years, got to the ACC, was willing to spend whatever money it took to get a seat at the table, so they're at least in the running. The question to be asked is, how many eyeballs do you bring? You may be a wonderful stool, we got great facilities. Are you going to draw big crowds? And what did SMU do, to the pleasant surprise of many last year? They won the ACC East in their first year. How to debunk some myths of the ACC. What is the counter argument to the 32-team conference? Think of how many schools that are out there that literally the fall is their economic livelihood, smaller communities. They're the schools that are going to throw an absolute hissy fit, and it's likely to be a near revolution in college sports. Because what happens to those great schools that are not in the top 32 is going to be a second-tier conference, which is unpalatable to me. So, as they say, get your popcorn and what's going to happen. See what's going to happen. So, That's it for today. Any questions? Yes, Evan.
Hey, what's going to happen to the practice of major colleges paying big bucks to small schools to come and get beat up on Saturday afternoon?
That's gone. That will be gone, which was an important economic revenue source for a lot of the schools. I mean, A&M the last couple of years will pay some of the, I call them directional schools, Northwest Louisiana, $2 million. Well, their athletic budget might be $10 million, so that's a big chunk. That's going by the wayside.
You mentioned last time you talked about many of the big colleges have a staff of people to do nothing but deal with the NIL thing and helping to get NIL contracts and all those kind of things. Is that still continuing, or how's this?
It's gotten even more sophisticated. Our athletic department hired a lawyer to deal with nothing but NIL contracts. And in a way, also helping the kids. I'm not sure anybody's told the kid, you think you pay, but you're going to have to pay taxes, and welcome to the real world. So it's going to be a fascinating scenario. We have, on our football staff, used to, about 80% of our time was spent on recruiting high school kids, scouting them. It's flipped. It's almost like an NFL, like Gil Brandt with the Cowboys. We spend about 75% of our time checking all the other schools' kids ready to hop, evaluating the talent, the transfers, and all the big schools are doing that. It's just tragedy. And eventually the kids in high school, they have to probably go to a junior college or a smaller college and go upstream. The universities will scout them and reach down and pluck them out, which is very unfair to the smaller schools that are making the initial investment. Yes.
The well-publicized Texas Tech signing for $5.1 billion was a junior at the time that deal was struck. Is there any lower limit if there's a hotshot ninth grader with a strong arm? What's the current circumstance?
This is so crazy. I'm sure they will be stalking the maternity wards and signing kids when they're 2 months old if their genetics look good. You're right.
Thanks, Manning, the great-grandson Manning. Yeah.
Boy, I wish we'd have been up front on that. That would have been nice. But you're right. Right now, there are no limits. The rules are hopefully going to be enforced if they create to bring back some sanity within this chaos so that we can sort of go back to enjoying the college athletic experience like we used to do. Maybe I'm dreaming. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.